For thousands of years, a story has been told. The story of a great civilization lost in the middle of the ocean, a place that once symbolized power and wealth. Its name was Atlantis. For thousands of years, a story has been told. A powerful civilization in the middle of the ocean, Atlantis. Plato wrote this story in two of his works, Timaeus and Crete. According to legend, Atlantis was one of the most powerful and wealthy civilizations in the world. But one day, the great city vanished. Earthquakes and massive waves swallowed Atlantis into the depths of the ocean. The story of Atlantis first appeared in the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato. But did Atlantis truly exist, or was it only a legend? Atlantis was not just a city, but a vast empire. According to Plato, the founder of Atlantis was the sea god Poseidon. Poseidon began to rule a great island in the middle of the ocean. Poseidon had 10 sons and divided the island into 10 kingdoms. The eldest son was named Atlas, and the island was named after him. For centuries, Atlantis thrived as a powerful and wealthy civilization. But one day dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and a massive storm rising over the Atlantic began moving toward the island. Atlantis was not only a powerful city, it was also a great center of trade. Ships moving through the inner canals carried goods from distant lands into the heart of the city. The capital of Atlantis was built in circular rings. Plato describes Atlantis as a civilization of incredible wealth. At the center of Atlantis stood a magnificent temple. It was dedicated to Poseidon, the god of the sea, and symbolized the power of the city. The people of Atlantis gathered around it to honor their god. Atlantis was not only a powerful city, but also the center of a great kingdom. Its rulers believed they were descendants of Poseidon and governed Atlantis with wealth and power. The island contained a precious metal called orichalcum. Atlantis was said to contain a precious metal called orichalcum, according to ancient sources. It was considered the most valuable metal after gold. But the power of Atlantis did not last forever. According to ancient accounts, great earthquakes and disasters began one day. The sea rose, and the mighty city was swallowed by the ocean. After the destruction of Atlantis, only legends remained. For centuries, people have wondered whether this lost city truly existed. The city of Atlantis had an unusual design. It was built in a great circular plan made of rings of land and water canals. Atlantis was also a great center of trade. Ships arriving at its harbors brought gold, silver, and valuable goods from distant lands. It also possessed a powerful navy. This fleet carried the power of Atlantis across many parts of the ocean. Over time, Atlantis became more than just an island. With its powerful navy and wealth, it grew into a vast empire. According to Plato, the story was even older. The first person to hear it was the Athenian lawgiver Suno. During his journey to Egypt, Solon learned this story. Egyptian priests told him about a powerful civilization that existed in ancient times. According to the priests, Atlantis existed in very ancient times. Egyptian records claimed that this powerful civilization lived nearly 9,000 years before Solon's time. The priests told Solon that Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. In the ancient world, this place is known today as the Strait of Gibraltar. According to Plato, Atlantis was a vast island. Its fertile lands, mountains, and wide plains allowed a powerful civilization to rise there. According to the legend, the story of Atlantis begins with the sea god, Poseidon. Poseidon chose this island as his domain and established a new kingdom there. Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito, who lived on the island. According to the legend, the kings of Atlantis were born from this union. Poseidon and Cleito had 10 sons. These sons became the first rulers of Atlantis and divided the island into 10 kingdoms. The eldest of these kings was Atlas. The island of Atlantis and the surrounding ocean were said to be named after him. The 10 kings of Atlantis gathered together at certain times. During these meetings, important decisions were made about the laws and governance of the empire. Atlantis was not only a powerful empire, it also possessed fertile lands. Vast plains were used for agriculture, providing great wealth for the people of the city. In Atlantis, the canals were not used only for defense. They also served as the main routes for trade and transportation throughout the city. The markets of Atlantis were filled with merchants from distant lands. Gold, silver, and valuable goods were traded throughout the city. The harbors of Atlantis held hundreds of ships. These vessels were used both for trade and for military expeditions. Atlantis was known not only for its wealth, but also for its military power. A large and disciplined army protected the city and its empire. According to Plato's account, Atlantis possessed a very precious metal called orichalcum, which was considered the most valuable metal after gold. Atlantis was not wealthy only because of gold and silver. Ancient sources mention a mysterious metal called orichalcum. Some accounts claim it had an extraordinary shine and was one of Atlantis' greatest treasures. Over time, Atlantis became more than a wealthy civilization. As its power grew, it began to dominate the lands around it. Atlantis was becoming a vast empire. As the power of Atlantis grew, so did its influence. Over time, the empire expanded beyond its island and began to dominate many other lands. According to Plato's account, the people of Atlantis eventually began to change. They moved away from their divine origins and became increasingly greedy. In the legend, Zeus, king of the gods, noticed this and gathered the other gods for a council. However, this may only be a mythological explanation. Some researchers believe the story of Atlantis might actually be a memory of a great natural disaster. Some researchers believe the story of Atlantis may be connected to a massive natural disaster. Earthquakes and rising seas may have set the stage for the fall of the great city. When the disaster began, the people of Atlantis did not understand what was happening. Earthquakes shook the city while the waters in the canals began to surge. Soon the sea began to rise. As the canals overflowed, parts of Atlantis started to sink beneath the water. According to ancient accounts, the disaster ended quickly. In a single day and night, Atlantis sank beneath the depths of the ocean. After the destruction of Atlantis, only legends remained. Whether the city truly existed has been debated for centuries. After the fall of Atlantis, its story continued to be told for centuries. Even medieval maps sometimes showed mysterious islands in the middle of the ocean. When the age of exploration began, some explorers hoped to find Atlantis. Ships sailing across the oceans were searching, not only for new lands, but also for traces of a lost civilization. Even today, the search for Atlantis has not completely ended. Scientists and researchers explore the ocean floor, hoping to find traces of a lost civilization. Some researchers believe the Atlantis legend may be a memory of a real disaster. One of the strongest theories links the story to the massive volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea. Another theory suggests that the remains of Atlantis may lie near the Azores Islands in the Atlantic Ocean. Some researchers believe this region could be the remnants of an ancient land that once existed above the sea. Whether Atlantis truly existed is still unknown, yet the legend has continued to inspire human imagination for thousands of years. Perhaps Atlantis truly existed, or perhaps it was only a legend. But deep beneath the ocean lies a question that remains unanswered. Did Atlantis ever truly exist?